Okay, hi everyone. I want to start off by introducing a couple of people that we're going to be working with this morning. Emilie Jolie, who is the co-creator and CEO of a company called Zoe Interactive, and she'll be talking about her work and what the app does. We're also joined by Maria Sanchez Izaza. She's a visiting scholar here at Bellevue College, and she comes with a large background in VR development and is currently teaching a course on VR development and client relationships, those two things joined together here at Bellevue College. So, what I would like to do is turn everything over to you, Emilie, and we will we will get started. And first of all, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit about Zoe Immersive and the kind of work that you're doing, be much appreciated.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Bruce. Hi, everybody. So my name's Emily. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of this VR company. I am by background a interaction designer. So that's my original job was to design interfaces and tools for tons of different technologies. So I've been working in the VR space since 2012, I think, something like that. So it's been a little bit, and I was running an innovation lab out of Switzerland, which is where I'm from. And in this lab, we were university students at the University of Art and Design in Geneva. So everything that you see in the Zoe softwares and in our apps actually came from that research at the university. So it was a university project originally, a very long time ago. So that's also interesting to know for all of you. And yeah, we ran Innovation Lab for about 8 years. We were tinkering with new technologies. VR headsets ended up on our laps at some point, and our goal was to make those technologies easier for those who don't know how to code, essentially. So our very first project with our technology was a 360 interactive comic book, I believe, in on iPhones. So that was 2013, I believe, and was basically one of our friend at university, had no idea how to code anything. He wanted to do this interactive comic book. So we basically built a plugin for him in Unity so that he could do that. And it was a very, very simple plugin in a very old version of Unity that had Unity was very bare bones at the time. And it was simply triggering different storylines based on where you looked. So you could say, if I look here, this character starts to talk, and then you could change the storylines that way. So that's a bit of background. I'm not the only one in that company. There's two other co-founders with me, and my other co-founder, who's our CTO, she's also a product. She's a product designer from Colombia, and she moved to Switzerland when she was a teenager. We met there. And she's worked in edtech for a very long time as well. And yeah, what we did one day is we thought, well, these tools are very useful to us. They could be useful to others. In 2019, we've put them out there under a different name. It was not Zoe. We just whipped up a name one day and thought, let's just put them and see what happens. And we thought we were going to sell them to big entertainment companies like Disney, Cartoon Network, those kinds of people. So you can imagine me going with a suitcase and a big VR headset and a computer and a PC and sensors. I know what Sony Pictures or Paramount, all these things took an hour and a half to set up just for a 5-second demo. But we sold a bit there, but we ended up actually with 90% of high school teachers in our first cohorts, and that's how basically Zoe started to exist as an education platform for immersive technologies.
So, I have a question. You have started with high school students. You found an interest there. I've also noticed that you have a large number of colleges and universities that are starting to use Zoe. And could you explain why schools are so interested in Zoe? You had initially approached Paramount and kind of corporate hosts and sponsors, maybe they weren't quite so interested, but or they didn't see the potential, or how is it that you moved into the educational space versus the more commercial
Like
kind of
commercial
corporate
space.
space?
I think it was also affinity with our team. Like we wanted to work with a community. That's something that we've always wanted to do. We did get, we did contracts with Nickelodeon, Technicolors, those kinds of folks. But we felt like there was something interesting with having so many, like the people who were actually using it daily were teachers and not, with the corporate people, we would knock on doors and do all that like biz dev stuff. But with the teachers, it was very interesting. And I actually met the very first, it was a middle school actually, he was using our software. We were doing a startup accelerator, like a lot of us do in, I think it was Palo Alto for a couple of weeks. And I was just sitting on my computer, and this educator came to visit the incubator. And at some point, he saw me working on the software, and he said, "Oh, but I've used this with my kids." I'm like, "Oh, really? But who are you?" And so that's how we kind of connected. We did our first pilot, program with this middle high school out of San Diego, and a lot of the stuff that we have in our software now is due to that kind of moment where we went to San Diego for 3 weeks and we thought, all right, we'll just, stay in the class, see see what's happening. And at the time, only had a Unity plugin. So Unity is, very hard, especially for middle schoolers. I couldn't believe they were even trying to do Unity with the middle school kids, but, why not? So it was like the 10 to 10, they were 11 years old, something like that. And we did a little bit of tests. So we first had the kids build something using VR tools. So we directly showed them VR headsets and put them in VR and have them create something with not VR tool that we had designed. We used Google Blocks, which you may know or may remember for that test. And we had them build something in there. And then we had them do the Unity bit after that as a little boot camp. And, as they started using the flat screen version of things, they just couldn't move objects. They weren't able to use, it's very hard in 3D software to move things around. You have to use the gizmos, you have to click on windows to move things around. But when you're in VR, all you do is you take something and you place it somewhere and you're done. So that's how we started to build our Zoe app, basically, that you may have tried. So that one started very popular in middle high school. Also, the very first versions were on very old headsets. So a lot of the 3D models that we had in there were very bloxy and very simple. Hence, having a lot of middle high school interested in it because it looked like an app that a middle or high schooler could use. And then as we went, a year or two passed, we started collaborating with Meta a lot more, and the headsets started becoming much better. And now the audience has really shifted. So now the majority of our users are actually colleges and universities. So it's changed a bit over time. Features have improved as well, as it goes. But it was interesting to see the uptick. I think a lot of the attraction was in students creating content, basically, so it's used a lot for project-based learning approaches. And I think this year, especially, and a little bit last year, immersive technology is more popular in schools and in colleges. So you see a lot more classes and educators that are trying to use the tech, or they have VR devices that they can use. If you like 3 years ago was not the case, right? If you were asking someone, do you have a headset? They're like, what are you talking about? Oh, how much do I need to invest to actually pay for all the headsets and all of that? So now that narrative has changed a bit. It's still there, but it's changed quite a lot because we went from, I don't know, maybe 3,000 users to 100,000. So, there's people out there working on
I
this
was
stuff.
I was wondering if we could shift a little bit, just talk about Zoe itself and what it does.
Good idea.
It's run from the web, it's cross-platform. It has all these incredible features. Could you or it works on various devices, correct? Or uh,
Yeah, I can. I'll tell you a little bit exactly where it works. Yeah.
okay,
Um, you want me to show some images for that
sure,
part? Okay.
sure. And then it would be great if we could, uh, Maria has got some questions as well about her uses for her class. So
Sounds great. I'll do a quick one just so you know the all of you watching the video have at least some mental idea of what this software does. So we have two softwares. One is the Zoe app, and the other one is Zoe for Unity. They both of them allow for creating interactive, immersive experiences. They are just very two different solutions that do different things. So the Zoe app is a standalone app in VR, so you're creating and playing in the headset directly. So you don't necessarily need a computer to run it. You can do everything in the headset. You can also connect the headsets together so that you can build and create together. And Zoe for Unity it's actually our original plugin and SDK, and a lot of the commercial work we did, we used that plugin, and it is simplifies Unity basically in a lot of levels for creating content and especially interactive content. So with the Unity plugin, you can create VR experiences, but you can also now create desktop experiences. We have a version coming out for mobile games as well. So it has a bit more flexibility in terms of what can be created with it. And the Zoe app is really only in VR for now. We are planning a version on probably iPads at some point. And, we've been working through that kind of, interface. And we still really love building in VR. So it's hard to bring something that is so kind of immersive and immediate in VR to flat screens, but it's important also for a lot of accessibility questions. So these are like the two softwares. And if you want to see I'll show you a few images so you see what it is, and then we can move on to the questions. So this is one of the environment that you have in our app. So these are experiences that were created by educators in the app. Um, it's pretty simple. You can build interactivity. You can do things. If I grab this object, then this shows up, and this happens if I press this button, or if I put this object here, something is going to trigger. So that's kind of the base of how it works. And this little simulation is a template now somewhere in the community library, and it was created by a chemistry teacher out of New York who wanted to build his whole little chemistry exercises. So this was like even an older version of Zoe from last year, but he had fun creating those simulations. And then another one I can show you that's a bit different. This one's criminology escape game. So it's a criminology teacher who's using it for building his simulations. They normally do those in a warehouse, like a physical warehouse, and has been wanting to create them using VR so that he can, modify them as he wants as he prepares the class and design them in different ways. So, yeah, that's for, what teachers have been building with. And we also have a ton of educators just getting students to create, of course, because that's the fun part as well.
What kind of feedback are you getting from your instructors using this and building it in terms of, first of all, how easy it was to use and develop their software, and then how effective are these 3D environments in relationship to the content that they're teaching? Do they see a lot of value coming out of these environments that they're building?
So I think, it depends on what their topic is. There's some might have an idea that actually is not that great in VR, right? So they'll come up with hurdles where they're thinking about, oh, let's do VR, but then they don't really have a concrete good plan. And that's where we help. Usually we try to make sure that whatever they have in mind will be very effective. And those who have a good plan, usually it works really, really well. So the criminology teacher, for example, he's replaced all of his, classes with that format, and he's very very happy with it. So it's been very effective but he had a very specific idea of how he wanted to use the technology and for a really clear learning outcome. So that's why he's been so successful with the class, right? So I think that that's very important for anyone designing VR, wanting to do VR, is to try to really integrate it into whatever you're already doing, basically, what are you already teaching, and then finding a moment where that really makes sense. I think one other thing that's been very successful is simply we do those teacher creator programs every quarter, as you know. And we've learned a lot through doing those. So I am always present at those programs. I'm always kind of involved in them. Otherwise, I forget why users are actually using our software. And the ease of use of the software has improved thanks to those programs too, because you can ask the teachers who've used our app maybe a year and a half ago, and then coming from there, a lot more hand-holding maybe was needed because of the VR headset, controllers, the technology, and all of that, button inputs and things like that. But now I've been pretty surprised, especially this quarter, we've received already, project that teachers whipped up on their own, and we didn't have to help. So things, improve, and we have been doing so much work in terms of having a lot of tutorials, having a lot of resources, and all of that. And I think that matters a lot for any VR in education company. Is VR is still a technology that's very new for a lot of teachers. So it's good to have as many resources as you can to make it easy and simple.
So we have one of our great instructors here, Maria. And Maria, I'm wondering if you could talk about the course that you're teaching and a bit about the process of your interest of getting involved with Zoe and where you see it fitting into the course that you're teaching. And how did
Yeah.
this come about? Because we got to know Emilie over the past few months, and so how are you planning to use it? What's the nature of your course, and how are you planning to have you been planning to use Zoe for your class? And where are you now with that?
Yeah, I actually before that I just wanted to ask something to Emily because I think it's interesting having these two tools, one working on 2D screens versus 3D, and I was just wondering like besides the easy understanding of a 3D space, do you see any advantages of working on VR? Like what's like the creative process do you think is different, like comparing creating VR experiences inside VR versus VR experiences from a computer?
On the computer. Yeah, I think I mean from what I've seen and from what we've studied, there's a big difference between when you're doing it on flat screen and then you're trying to translate it. There's always a little bit of disconnect between the experience that you're trying to build on flat screen and then how it's going to look in VR. So it's kind of small things, but like the scale of objects or the way you think about things. And when we were using Unity, even for our own commercial projects with Meta, it was always a struggle having to go from the Unity flat screen to the VR and then changing things and doing it directly in the headset. You have that kind of natural feedback that you really see right away what it's going to be for your users. So you're building a little faster basically and creating a little faster. Aside from that, yeah, it just becomes a little very natural, I think, after a little while. Once you get, the tools can be all like any tool, you have to learn the menus and the buttons and all of that. But once you're there, there's a real benefit of being inside the world when you're building VR versus not. That's why there's a few VR tools out there. There's Zoe, there's Shapes XR that does a really good job for like interface design and things like that. Arkio, I think, is another one. So there's a couple that are, if you're really building VR experiences, building in VR is kind of a must, at least from my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool addition. And as Bruce was saying, also what I try a lot of different VR tools, but I think for education, like I really like that the focus of Zoe is on education. So you can like easily on the like the most of the things that you will need to create an educational experience, you can find them in Zoe, right? Because it's really created with that focus. And like for the class, I want to include the Unity plugin that I think will be very helpful for people that are getting started with Unity. And I think it will be like I think Unity can be a bit overwhelming at the beginning. There is so much to
Yeah.
do, and then if you add coding into that and all the setup for VR, like so many things that you need to keep in mind before starting to build on VR. And what I understand is that with Zoe for Unity is quite easy. You just like install the package and then you have all the setup and also you have a lot of behaviors that are really easy to create without needing to code in them. So I think it's like a great first step for people that want to get into Unity and developing VR, XR experiences. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Maria, could you describe your class a little bit, what the focus of the class is? And then you're covering over 2 quarters. There's a focus the first quarter and then a second quarter. And maybe, yeah, could you describe your class? Because this is a great application for a program like Zoe, right?
Yeah, so this class is part of a National Science Foundation's grant that the Bellevue College got. And basically, what we are looking is to promote XR in the Pacific Northwest and in the US and among educational institutions. So for this class is a class that has never teach before inside Bellevue College. So we are working with the students that are working with faculty and other clients to work in projects that they want to develop. So the first quarter is a little more about introducing to XR, and because people don't have some people have knowledge on this field, but a lot of them are completely new. They are just interested about this. So there are, yeah, understanding a little bit what is XR and how to build XR experiences, and especially how to organize and work as a team for a client. So I think it's a really cool class because you are learning by doing. So you learn how to project manage, be a project manager by being a project manager and doing like all the communication, developing all the communications skills and how to present projects to your clients, all of these by actually having a real client that is faculty. So it also helps to build XR educational experiences inside Bellevue College that other students can use for learning as the students are learning as well by building those experiences. So yeah, I think it's a really nice class, and we are working right now with 3 different projects for music, chemistry, exercise. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see the results.
Could you describe the performance guitar performance app and maybe the chemistry one, both of those, just a little more detail because they're both interesting.
Yeah, so the live performance ones is we want to create a VR space for students that are learning to play instruments to practice, but to be able to practice in front of an audience, because sometimes you can be nervous, and I mean there are a lot of tools like this for public speaking, but this one will be focused on musicians, so you will be able to see like your guitar or the piano, like the instrument that you are playing, and to have an auditorium in front of you. And as Bruce was saying, these are 2 quarters, so we want to start like really small, but then we can get more complex and maybe switch the kind of audience that you have, the kind of people that are watching your concert, to make them react if you stop playing or if you're acting nervous, all of this. So it will serve as, yeah, just a way for them to practice to have a presentation in front a lot of people. And then the chemistry one is to understand how atoms work and yeah, how they can connect. I like something really cool is when you are working in this educational experience, you also need to understand better like things like chemistry that the last time that I studied that was more than 10 years ago. So it's really hard to remember these things, but it's also cool because you are acting as a person that doesn't understand, and then you need to create something that more people will be able to understand, yeah, how atom works, all these chemistry bonds and yeah, concepts on VR as well. So yeah, I think it's cool. We are just starting the, yeah, on understanding the problem and how we can approach and what will be the best way to give a solution to that. So yeah, let's see how it goes.
So I was just wondering, just one more thing about Zoe and your use in the class. This came of high interest to you. That Zoe is strong interest to you for this class, and why is that? How does that? How does Zoe fit within this plan that you've this approach to teaching? and the capacity, say the guitar performance scenario. Is this an easy thing to build in Zoe, or what are some of the advantages of using Zoe for the kind of work that you're doing in your class?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely easier than just building everything from scratch because there are like so many interactions that are set by default, and you like Unity doesn't have any like integrated all the behaviors you want to create, you need to code them yourself. So for someone that is not familiar with coding, like for me, this was my experience with Unity. I never took like programming classes, and you need to create everything yourself, right? And it's a nice process, but it takes time to understand. So if you have just like a more friendly UI that will let you create this kind of interaction, even something as simple like I want to tap an object and I want this object to disappear. That like if you really wanted to do it with Unity without Zoe, you will need to create a script with code for that, and then with Zoe you can just create these interactions way faster because they it's just like by default you can say if I tap this something happens, things like that. So I think it will really make the process like the creation process faster, and will be like we will be able to get better results without spending too much time in understanding coding and how a script works on Unity.
So, Maria, I'm wondering if you have any questions for Emilie, anything that came up, just things that you're curious about or want to know more about in terms of how you're using Zoe.
mm, I don't know, like maybe about the future of VR in education. Like, have you seen, you've been in this for such a long time. Do you see it's already like increasing? How do you think it's going to be in the future?
That's such a hard question, Maria.
Yeah.
Thank you. But no, it's not a bad one. I mean, it's funny because when you're in the space and well, Maria, you've been working in that space for, you know the space too. It always feel like it's going slow in some way, like, but it's
Yeah.
actually not going that slow. So, I think with education specifically, there's a lot of groups that are working in silos, so they're not necessarily sharing a lot about what they're doing, whether it be the college itself or the students or the teachers. But if you start looking at, everyone has a VR lab now, so that's very exciting. And
Mhm.
there's really good uses for it. And the experiences also have changed and improved quite a lot. So, when you're teaching VR in education now, the quality of the experiences or the content that comes out is much better than it was, even like a year or a year and a half ago. One thing I also noticed by when I was, I'm going to conferences a lot and I hear a lot I go always to the education talks and kind of see where everything is at. And I think there's in the past 2 years a big trend in mostly, just purchasing content and then showing that content to students, without really building anything. And
Mhm.
now I've heard a lot of, folks in that space saying now we want to build our own, we want to build our own. And so I think that's very interesting because it's shifting from something that you're just, consuming from a developer, but that you're trying to make your own now. And I think that that's something very interesting, especially with teachers. How do you get educators who are not as savvy as you, Maria, to actually get something done with VR? It's
Yeah.
not, it's not easy at all. So I'm very excited about that creative part because as soon as you can get teachers to be a bit more creative and be able to modify things or use templates or things like that, then you get more content and more implementation also in schools where they're not just, using it for one class, but they're repeatedly using it. So that's something, we've seen. As far as the future, well, I'm very bullish on VR in general. I think it already has its place in many different industries, maybe not all the sexy ones like video games. But it's been in healthcare for a long time. It's there in training. There's a lot of companies now that also look for those skills, and not just VR, but I would say just real-time 3D skills, that you can teach in Unity. and using VR to students, it's something that a lot of companies are looking for. So it's opening up a lot of job opportunities for students who are learning all those skills that they definitely will need. And same for teachers, I think. So, and of
I,
course, there's AI. We can talk about AI if we want, but it's going to be too long. Um,
so I do, I do have one more question, Emily, and then I think we can probably wrap up our conversation. And this is something that Maria has actually done quite a bit of work with so far. We were working with a program called Mozilla Hubs, and in the past,
Yeah.
it's and Maria had developed all these ways of bringing in web-based AI into those environments. And I'm curious to know how you're thinking of incorporating these new AI tools into your environments and what kind of thoughts you have regarding that and possible ways that it can be implemented in Zoe.
Yeah, we have a few ideas, but I think a lot of our ideas are actually just going to come from like teachers who want features and just request them. So we get a lot of requests for things like AI avatars. We don't haven't implemented that yet, but we're trying to see what's working because everyone's building that, and we're actually just asking educators who've tried things and they give us feedback, see what they like, what they didn't like. We've looked a lot at just to use it for content, facilitating content creation, which is an obvious way of using, Gen AI for an app like Zoe. And if you must know, the very first version of Zoe, which we ditched, was a text-based tool. So you were actually texting on your phone what you wanted in your scene. Like, I don't know, I need a blue balloon and a gray sky, and you would hit send, and it would appear in the headset. So we were having fun sessions with me in San Francisco and my team in Switzerland. I was like texting them stuff, and they were just building an experience from the other side. So, we're interested in that part too, in facilitating the basically the creation of interactivity using probably voice more than text, because we don't like text is not going to be as interesting in the end.
Yeah.
Voice, and also for accessibility reasons, we can start if we start using voice in our app and remove the controllers, then you'll get a lot more it'll be more easy to even more easy to use for a lot of people. So I'm interested in that part, and we've been working also with faculty who either work with students with disabilities or have disabilities themselves, and interested in seeing how we can use certain other ways of creating so that they can create content as well. So imagine being able to create a whole interactive educational scene by just speaking instead of typing and manipulating controllers. So that's something I'm really excited to explore. But in the end, it's only whatever teacher's request gets on the list, and the thing at top of the list gets done first, and then down the list. So there's other things we need to do, like pass through, for
Yep.
example, right, Maria?
Yeah.
Well, Emily, thanks so much for it's I think it's a lot later in Switzerland right now. You're probably approaching, is it midnight there?
No, it's 7:40. It's
Oh,
not too bad.
7:40. Oh, not too bad.
Oh,
Okay.
it's fine. It's my normal. I've delayed my when I'm in Switzerland, my day is a little, it goes until like 9, 10 p.m., but that's fine.
I see. Well,
I have
thank you
mornings
so
off.
much, and also for the tutorials and the classes. And I talked with Sil yesterday, and gave me a great overview of the program. Lots of tips and tricks for using it. Anyway,
Cool.
Zoe's a great company, and I really appreciate your stopping by to see us and talk with Maria and I. And I'm
Thank
excited about
you.
Maria's class. This is the first one of its kind for this Bellevue College, and she's just the right person for that. So,
And yeah,
uh,
it's super exciting the way you're using, you're working with projects and clients, and that's really awesome. So I'm excited to see the projects too.
I'm also interested in this international network that you've created, Emily, through Zoe, and it
Yeah.
really is international, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to being part of that.
Yeah, I'm excited to be able at some point to rally people in the same place somehow. I don't know how we're gonna do that. I'm gonna need a big sponsor who can pay travel for everyone to meet. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe in France. Whatever. in the middle somewhere. But yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. Well, thank
Yeah.
you, Maria,
Right.
too.
Do our
It's
best.
good to see you this morning,
Yeah,
and
thanks, Bruce.
thanks for your time, Emily. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. I'll see you both soon.
Okay, bye-bye.